if you're even just a little bit familiar with the Star Wars community, you have probably heard the constant complaints about the newest show, The Acolyte. It's trash, it breaks canon, it's gay so it's awful. I originally wasn't even planning on finishing the show because it just didn't hook me and I wasn't interested, but after reading and hearing all of the lovely and constructive criticisms, I just had to finish the show to see how bad it can get. I mean, there hasn't been a reaction this strong in Star Wars since The Last Jedi, but in that specific scenario I could understand why. It was the 8th film of a generational franchise with choices made that not all fans agreed with, yet this spin-off show that takes place thousands of years ago before the films created the same effect, if not worse? So are Star Wars fans just complaining and crying about nothing like they usually do, or do they have some actual backings this time? Is The Acolyte really as bad as everyone's saying it is? I'm gonna tell you my thoughts on this show, and hopefully we can find out the answer. But first, I just want to put a disclaimer that yes, I know Star Wars fans are dedicated.
Ray Skywalker.
And there are many who have strong feelings for this show, but if you are one of those people who hate this show simply because the main character is a woman, or that nearly every character is a person of color, or think that sending hate messages and death threats to real-life actors is normal, you have more problems in the show. Because you can think that giving a Yordle pronouns is stupid all you want, just don't use that as an excuse to be a piece of shit. Back to the review. So like I've said before, if you've been on the internet at all the last couple of weeks, you've probably heard that the show has not been received well. There are a lot of factors that make up that statement. The faults of any show can come down to bad writing, poor characters, and a weak plot, but many in the Star Wars community dislike the show because it is quote-unquote woke. Now, this term gets thrown around a lot in media. Pretty much any movie or show with people of color or who are gay is immediately deemed as woke, but that's not what that term means. I find it funny that everyone has access to Google yet no one likes to use it. So to put on my nerd emoji face on just for a little bit, the term woke means to be aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues. Now, a lot of people have associated the witch cult as being an example of Star Wars going woke, but that's not exactly true. Yes, they are a group of lesbians hiding away, but Star Wars has shown female force-wielding communities before. And while I'll acknowledge that phrases
The galaxy is not a place that welcomes women like us
is very much meant to imply a message about the struggles members of the LGBT community go through, it does not directly state that message. Let me put it like this: The Boys is woke, X-Men is woke, because those societal issues are the spotlight of those respective franchises. Having one women-filled cult is not an example of Star Wars going woke. It's actually a much simpler problem of bad writing, because the writers clearly had an agenda when creating this cult, but the execution is very much lacking. Just like the very awkward pronoun scene, the issue isn't that the show is fully dedicating itself to those messages, it's actually the fact that it isn't. If you want to make a show about how gay people in space are struggling, go ahead and make it. But don't weave it into a story that has nothing to do with those problems, especially in such a non-subtle way. The other big issue people had is how it breaks the Star Wars canon, apparently. This one I feel more inclined to go against, because this is where fans get pretty nitpicky. I mean, we can do this one step at a time, fuck it. The twins being born from the Force does not break canon. While the show never explains how they are born, which we'll get into later, it is very much implied that their mother, or someone who knows their mother, used the Force to bring them into life. Fans believe this makes Anakin less special, as he is Force Jesus, and was born out of thin fucking air. This one is a bit hard for me to defend because the show just refuses to give details on this very important piece of lore, but the lack of information doesn't mean it breaks canon, it just means that there is a way to create life with the Force, and hopefully, in Season 2, if that even happens, we'll explain how their creation came to be. The next one is Ki-Adi-Mundi being alive. Due to his infamous line about the Wookiees, sorry, I meant the Sith. Jesus, prequel fans being these movies so much I forget their actual lines. Due to his line about the Sith being extinct, he should not be here. Also, I believe his species does not live this long or something. This one has two explanations. First off, Kamir is not a Sith, and never said he was. He just said that's what the Jedi would call him. And from the one scene Ki-Adi's been in, he doesn't know about the plot or what's going on. as the show has demonstrated they're trying to keep everything undercover, so he doesn't even know about this guy really. Secondly, Kiadi's species living longer is just a retcon, which changes nothing about the prequel films. See, Star Wars fans are pretty fickle and don't like it when things are changed, even if the changes are pretty small. I mean, midichlorians seemed pretty canon breaking, yet I don't hear people complaining about that. See, this is what I mean, that the show has legitimate problems that keep it from being good, yet people only focus on the dumb shit and think that's the entire reason the show sucks. The Acolyte as a show is not bad just because someone has a lightsaber whip or because there's fire in space, because that's never happened before. It's due to just very simple storytelling problems. So let's finally talk about those storytelling problems. The main issues of the Acolyte. And it's pretty much everything else. For starters, the characters are just not that intriguing. The only person I thought was kind of interesting was Soul, who I recently learned that his actor learned English for his role, which is kinda badass. But even his character is flawed due to the story he's in. In fact, all of the characters suffer because the story is just not good. They all have weak motives and even weaker reasonings for those motives. Let me give you an example. So the whole thing about Soul's character is that he never told the Jedi about the virgins because he felt bad about what he did to the witch cult. But his reasoning is that he thought May was dead and he needed both twins to prove its existence. But why? Why does he specifically need both twins to prove that? You already got confirmation that they were both created by the Force in some way. Why do you specifically need both of them there at the same time to prove that? You had 4 witnesses there who knows she had a twin sister. It's just kind of hard to explain unless you watch it, but all of the characters are handled like this. Osha and May could have had a really interesting story. In the last episode, I actually thought they were going to swap places entirely, which is a really cool idea. Osha, who never became a Jedi due to holding on to her anger, ends up joining the dark side, while May, who had been raised by it more or less, sees the error of her ways and then joins the light. The story could have been about 2 sisters who are so opposite to each other that even their development counteracts their own, and swap places by the end of the story. But nope, May just gets her memory wiped very conveniently and undoes the little character development she had, and Osha joining Kamir felt very forced and weirdly romantical, which they did not build on at all. There's also the infamously terrible flashback episodes. Yes, there's 2 of them, and they both suck. And I believe this is the root of all the show's problems, because the plot really only gets started because of these episodes and what happens in them. So if you get these episodes wrong, the rest of the story suffers for it. Right off the bat, I think the placement of the episodes is just terrible. They come out of nowhere, and it's not like the characters are seeing these flashbacks. It's not like Soul goes up to Osha and says, "Sit down, let me tell you about what happened that day." It just sort of happens. Which in itself is fine. It can sometimes be fun when the audience knows the secret or mystery, and now we have to watch the characters unveil it for themselves. Unfortunately, the secret is kinda bullshit. In episode 3, it's shown that Osha doesn't want to be a witch and wants to join the Jedi. May hates this and then just decides to kill her because siblings, am I right? I'm an only child, I cannot relate to any of this. So she starts a fire to burn her diary, and it somehow destroys the entire base, and all the witches are just somehow dead on the ground without any of that shown to us. Now, people were initially annoyed by this, as you would expect, but I kind of held on a little bit of hope, because I thought it was done on purpose. We didn't really see everything, and that some details are left unexplained. We didn't see the full flashback, and I thought surely the Jedi were involved in some way. All of the Jedi who were there talk about how what they did that day was so unforgiving and terrible. One of them who was there even kills himself because... Wait a minute, you look kind of familiar. Dean Charles Chapman? You really need to get different roles, my guy. But because he offs himself, it gives the implication that what they did was so awful, but we never saw it, so surely something went down. That was pretty curious as to what the reveal would be. This cover-up is honestly what carried me to watch the rest of the season, simply because I just wanted to know what happened. And then it was revealed that it wasn't that big of a deal at all. Episode 7 is the same exact episode but told from the Jedi's perspective, but we only learn of a few things. Soul actually ends up killing the mom, and he dropped May to save Osha. Which, okay, that explains a few things, but not everything else? So that small dinky fire did cause the entire place to explode, and all the witches just die because, I don't know, they lost the will to live? They don't fucking explain it. The only person who this flashback justifies is Soul, because from his point of view, he killed Osha's sister and mom in pretty much cold blood. But then why did this guy off himself? You didn't do anything! Why are you so guilty that you force isolated yourself for 16 years when all you did was get beat up by Bigfoot? Again, these 2 episodes are so essential to the plot, but since they are written so painfully bad, the rest of the story can't really continue without it. The show also just feels like it can't commit to any of the ideas it creates. Let me explain. The show starts off with an assassin killing a Jedi, and then it's shown the culprit has no idea what has happened. This is obviously Osha, who has no idea May is alive, but from the audience's point of view, it's a murder mystery. But that's my point. The mystery is solved very quickly. The Jedi quickly know that it wasn't Osha who did it and that she has a twin sister. Okay, fine, but now it's a plot about 2 sisters reuniting. That should be interesting and take some time, and they meet each other already. Okay, well, now it could be May's turn to get some development. Maybe she has to grasp between choosing her family that she forgot or the master she's loyal to, and she already betrayed Kamir in like 10 minutes. See what I mean? Even something as cool as a Wookiee Jedi, something the writers were very proud of doing and pushed to have in the show, gets killed off screen. It's just so weird. The show feels like it's trying to speed things along, but it also feels too slow in some episodes, and it creates this very unpleasant paradox. So was there anything I genuinely liked from the show? Well, his helmet's cool. Yet despite all of those issues, and with how unbelievably boring the characters were, and how unengaging the story was, not to mention the budget is pretty shit, I mean really? Despite all that, I still don't really see the hate for it. Like sure, it's not a very good show and I'll probably never watch it again, but I mean, it's not the first bad Star Wars show. It has the same problems that a lot of the other Disney Plus shows have. Weak characters, a poor story, it even throws in a lame fan service for fun because Disney just can't help themselves. But like, I'm not angry about it. I mean, I sounded like I did, but it's not like it ruined my life or left me with a bad feeling. It just wasted my time, but that's something all bad media does to you. It just sucks because I've always believed that Star Wars is the most flexible franchise ever. Its setting alone allows any type of story to be told without it clashing with other projects. I mean, you've got your hero's journey, a political thriller, western, a war film, a kid show, a kid war show. I think that's why I like Star Wars Visions a lot, because it takes the flexibility of Star Wars and acts on it. It's just a shame that Disney doesn't really believe in that idea and just continues to pump out the same garbage over and over again. But I still don't really see why specifically this show gains so much attention. Disney has already fumbled 2 legacy characters in their own respective shows, and yet this spin-off with original characters is what sets people off? Yeah, I just don't get it. So do I think The Acolyte is bad? Yes. Do I think it's the worst thing ever? Kinda. Do I want to see that Kamir scene uncensored? I mean, I don't know, why are you asking? I just think a lot of people are giving into their inner dark side and can't really control their emotions about the show. And I mean, yeah, I know it's kind of hypocritical for me to say that since I just pointed out every single flaw with the show and said how bad it was. And that's fine, that's feedback, that's criticisms. But like I said earlier in the video, if you're one of the people that takes this show to heart so badly and feel the need to spread hate messages to real life actors, that doesn't really help anyone. I just think everyone should calm down, take a deep breath, and understand that yeah, it sucks. But I mean, so do the prequels.